try to put parliamentary government into a broader context. There are three pillars to our Constitution. The oldest pillar, and the one we're talking about, is Parliament. And it's the one that Canadians have the least respect for. The second pillar is federalism, that we have two orders of government, that we're governed by we're subject to two sets of laws. We vote for two different parliaments. And the third pillar, the one that Canadians are most enamored with, that they know the most about, the most they're excited about, is the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Over 90% of Canadians know about it, and over 90% of them think it's great. If you ask people about parliamentary government, it's more confusing and convoluted about how it works, and not many of them have much respect for the institution. But it's the oldest institution of the three pillars we have in Canada, and indeed, it's older than the modern state of Canada. The core of parliamentary government, the fundamental principle, is responsible government. This means that the executive, those that administer the laws, have to maintain the confidence of the legislature, those that are elected, and make the laws. Now, this principle runs back in British North American colonies to 1848. And it's based on the Westminster British one. It was adopted in Nova Scotia in the winter of 1848, and before the spring was out, it had been adopted in Prince Edward Island, in Brunswick, and in the old province of Canada. When Canada came together in 1867, the preamble to the Constitution said, oh, we, these beseeching Canadians, are asking the British Parliament to give us a constitution similar in principle to that of the United Kingdom. I quoted that directly. But the United Kingdom doesn't have a written constitution. How can we have a British North America? The reason is because we inserted something into our constitution which is very un-British, a federal system. We decided to create two orders of government. I'm not saying that's bad. And there are very good reasons for it. First off, maybe we wouldn't have had a Canada had we not had it. We had Quebec, which wanted to maintain control over culturally sensitive issues, like education, like local institutions, like property and civil rights. And we had the maritime provinces as well, the colonies. They were also pushing for a federal system. Indeed, most maritimers were against joining Canada. You might not know that, but they were sort of tricked into it. So because we had we decided on a federal system, it had to be written down. Well, who does what? Who's responsible for the fish and lighthouses and buoys? That's federal. Who's responsible for the post office and weights and measures? That's federal. Who's responsible for education and municipal affairs and saloons and taverns and hospitals? That's provincial. Who's responsible for the administration of justice? Well, we'll say that's provincial. Who's responsible for the criminal code? We'll say that's federal. So those are spelled out in sections 91 to 95 of the Constitution. But we threw all these other flowers around this. And one of them was, okay, well, this is how parliamentary government would work. So if you read the rest of the British North America Act, I'm not saying you should, but it's largely a fiction. It says that the Governor General decides when Parliament is dissolved, when it's prorogued. Well, actually, we know that she does it by convention with the Prime Minister wants. It says, in fact, the Prime Minister's name does not appear anywhere in the 1867 Constitution. You wouldn't know he exists. He exists by virtue of these unwritten rules. Because the Constitution is what we think it is. And what happens? If all of us think that a party that wins the majority of the seats in the House of Commons should be entitled to form the government, that's going to happen because you won't be able to fight that. You may not have liked, I don't know, a government winning the majority of the seats, but you accept it as a democratic upshot. I'm keen to get your questions and argue with you. because I'm a contrarian, or just to see other lights. But let me just finish on this note. I heard Neil mentioning it, the role of the MP. There are different ways of seeing your MP, and they have many jobs, and it's a tough job. The old historical British view of the MP, articulated by Edmund Burke, is that you're electing someone to be a trustee. You're saying, you know, we think this person is the best person to represent us. We trust their judgment. They seem wise, level-headed. And, you know, I can't understand all these complex policy issues that come up, or I don't have time to follow them. Here's someone who I trust, so I defer to your judgment. So that's the trustee view of the MP. And that's historically the old British view. Another view, which is rooted more in America, is the delegate view of the MP. And this view is articulated by the Reform Party, of which Stephen Harper was elected to, but they don't live in, which is, you're simply my mouthpiece. I elected you to express our opinions in the constituency, not to use your judgment. Yeah, you might be in favor of abortion. We're not. And we want you to get whatever the issue is I just mentioned. We want you to get that across. That's why we elected you to express this. Thus, in the United States, you have people saying, write your congresswoman, launch a campaign. And they have influence there because that's how a lot of the public sees their representatives. These campaigns aren't as successful here. And the reason is because of a third view of the MP, and which is now dominated. And that is to see the MP as first and foremost as a party member. Hey, you ran on this election platform. And you said you would do A, B, C, D, and E. And Stephen Harper, you're part of his team, Michael Ignatieff's team, Jack Layton's team. And I voted for the party. I expected you to do that. So I don't want you to use your judgment all of a sudden. No, you don't like that policy. And I don't want you all of a sudden to affect public opinion. We won the election, and this is why I voted for you. You're a party member. Another view of the MP, and these aren't all contradictory, especially these, is to see the MP as a regional spokesman. And this is more significant in Canada and the United States than it is in Britain, although it exists there too, which is you might be electing somebody from Aurora, from Newmarket, but they should represent the interests and look out for the GTA or for Ontario. You know, Jim Flaherty is the minister responsible for Toronto. Conservatives don't have any seats right in Toronto. So the idea is, you know, if you're the MP from Manitoba, you should be there not just, okay, you were elected in Winnipeg, but you should be concerned about some issue that affects Churchill or Thompson as well, even though, and you know, you're a lot farther from them in Winnipeg than you are from Kenora or Thunder Bay. So that's seeing the MP as a regional spokesperson. And a fifth view of the MP, which has really arisen in the last 20, 30 years, which comes from a lot of so-called equity-seeking groups, is to think of the MP primarily as a social mirror. In other words, well, it's not democratic. You know, 50% of Canadians are women, 50% of the MP should be women, 4% are Aboriginals, 4% should be Aboriginals, and so on and so forth. So you've got competing views of what the member of parliament does. And what's happened in our system is that the view of the party, the MP as party member, has become first and foremost. It's not like that in the United States, and it's not nearly as strongly good. And there are various reasons for this. In the United States, people can run and get elected and without reference to their party leader.